On this channel, we often talk about the quiet ways young James, the Earl of Wessex, has gently got things right where his uncle, Prince Harry, so painfully struggled. And those stories are true and they matter. But today, I want to do something a little different and something fair. Because for all of that, there is one arena in which Harry didn't merely succeed. He genuinely shone. One chapter of his life where the boy so often called the spare became something truly remarkable. A hero in the fullest sense of the word. And it is the one thing that James, on his very different and much quieter path, may well never do. So today, in fairness and with real admiration, I want to tell you about the extraordinary thing Harry did that James likely never will. Because it's a part of his story that deserves to be honored, and because it reveals something beautiful about the many different ways a person can choose to serve. Let me start by being honest about something. In all the noise of recent years, all the interviews, the memoir, the family fallout, it has become terribly easy to forget who Prince Harry once was in the eyes of the entire nation. And who he was for a decade of his life was a soldier, not a ceremonial one, not a royal in a costume uniform for the cameras, a real, serving, frontline soldier of the British Army, and by every honest account, he was a very good one. This is the chapter of Harry's life that, whatever else you may feel about him, deserves genuine respect. So let me tell it properly. Harry's military journey began in 2005, when he entered the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst, the training ground for the British Army's officers. There, stripped of his royal status, he was known simply as Officer Cadet Wales, and he went through the same grueling 44 weeks of training as every other recruit. He passed, was commissioned as an officer, and joined the Blues and Royals, part of the household cavalry. And from the very beginning, Harry made one thing absolutely clear. He did not want special treatment. In fact, when his planned deployment to Iraq was canceled over fears that he was too high-profile a target, Harry was devastated and furious. He made it known that he would rather leave the army altogether than sit safely at home while the men he had trained alongside, his brothers in arms, went off to war without him. Think about that for a moment. Here was a young prince who could have spent his life in comfort and safety, insisting, demanding, to be sent into harm's way alongside ordinary soldiers. That tells you something real about his character and about how seriously he took the idea of service. It's worth remembering, too, just how young he was when this determination first showed itself, and how genuine it was. Harry was never a natural fit for the classroom. As a boy, he often struggled academically and was frequently overshadowed by his more studious elder brother. But the moment he found the military, something clicked into place. Here was a world that suited him perfectly, one that valued action, courage, loyalty, and physical grit over book learning. For the first time, Harry had found an arena where he could genuinely excel, and he threw himself into it with everything he had. Those who trained alongside him have spoken of his determination, his refusal to trade on his royal name, and his genuine camaraderie with his fellow soldiers. He mucked in. He did the hard, unglamorous work. He earned the respect of tough, no-nonsense military men who would have had no time for a pampered prince playing at being a soldier. And that respect was not given lightly. It was earned through sweat and grit and genuine ability. In the army, Harry finally became the thing he had always wanted to be, not a prince, but simply a good man doing a hard job well. It was, in many ways, the making of him. And he got his wish. Harry served not one, but 2 operational tours of duty in Afghanistan, one of the most dangerous places on earth at the time. On his first tour, he worked on the ground in Helmand Province, calling in air support, living in austere and difficult conditions just like any other soldier. And then, determined to do even more, he retrained for one of the most demanding roles in the entire military. He became an Apache attack helicopter pilot. Now, I cannot stress enough how extraordinary that is. The Apache is one of the most complex and technologically advanced machines ever built, and only a tiny handful of people on Earth are qualified to fly one. It takes years of intense training and a rare combination of skill, nerve, and mental sharpness. And Harry did it. He returned to Afghanistan for a second tour as a fully qualified Apache co-pilot and gunner, flying real combat missions on the front line. This was not for show. This was genuine, dangerous, skilled military service, undertaken with courage. Over 10 years, Harry rose to the rank of captain, and when he finally left, the head of the British Army at the time said simply that Harry had achieved much in his 10 years as a soldier. That is high praise indeed, and it was earned. But here is the part that reveals the true heart of it, and why this chapter meant so much to Harry himself. Because the Army gave Harry something he had been searching for his entire life. It gave him a purpose. It gave him an identity that was truly his own. For a young man who had grown up as the second son, the spare, forever in his brother's shadow, forever defined by his birth rather than his own achievements, the Army was a revelation. In uniform, nobody cared that he was a prince. He was judged only on his ability, his courage, and his character, exactly like everyone else. He was, for the first time, just one of the guys. He found brotherhood there, real friendship forged in hardship. He found respect that he had genuinely earned. And he found a sense of belonging that had eluded him all his life. Harry has said in his own words that his years in the Army were the happiest time of his life. And when you understand where he came from and the pain and aimlessness of his youth, you understand exactly why. The Army didn't just give Harry a job, it gave him himself. And then Harry did something with that experience that may just be the finest achievement of his entire life. Because during his service, he saw, up close, the terrible cost of war on the bodies and minds of his fellow soldiers. He saw brave men and women return home wounded, injured, and struggling, often forgotten by the very society they had sacrificed so much to protect. And Harry decided to do something about it. In 2014, he founded the Invictus Games, an international sporting competition for wounded, injured, and sick service personnel and veterans. It was inspired by his belief that these heroes deserved to be seen, celebrated, and given a path back to hope and purpose through the power of sport. And it grew into something magnificent. The Invictus Games have now been held in cities all around the world, and have given thousands upon thousands of injured servicemen and women a stage on which to reclaim their strength, their pride, and their joy. Countless lives have been genuinely transformed by it. Harry once described the men and women of the armed forces as his personal role models, and through Invictus, he built them a lasting monument of dignity and hope. Whatever anyone thinks of Harry today, this is a real and lasting legacy of good in the world, and it flowed directly from his love of the military and his fellow soldiers. To understand just how meaningful the Invictus Games are, you have to picture what they actually do for the people who take part. Imagine a young soldier who has lost a limb, or their sight, or who carries invisible wounds of the mind that no one can see. Imagine the despair of returning home, feeling broken, forgotten, and unsure whether life still holds any purpose. And then imagine being given a chance to train, to compete, to stand tall once more in front of a cheering crowd, wearing your nation's colors, surrounded by others who understand exactly what you've been through. That is what Invictus gives. It gives shattered people their pride back. It shows them, and the watching world, that a wounded body or a troubled mind does not mean the end of a meaningful life. The very name Invictus means unconquered, and that is precisely the spirit the games celebrate, the unbreakable human will to keep going, no matter what. Harry didn't just organize a sports event. He created a beacon of hope for some of the bravest and most overlooked people in our society. He gave a voice to the voiceless and a stage to the forgotten. And he did it because he had served alongside these men and women, had seen their sacrifice with his own eyes, and simply refused to let their courage go unrecognized. Of all the things Harry has ever done, this is surely the one of which he can be most proud. It is a genuine gift to the world. There is a genuine sadness woven into this story too, and it deserves acknowledging with compassion. Because when Harry stepped back from royal duties in 2020, he was required to give up his honorary military titles and the right to wear his uniform at official occasions. And for a man who loved his service so deeply, who found his truest self in that world, that loss cut very, very hard. Friends have said it was one of the most painful parts of his departure. The uniform meant more to him than almost anything, and having to set it aside was, for Harry, a genuine grief. It's a poignant reminder that beneath all the controversy is a man whose proudest identity was that of a soldier, and who lost the outward symbols of it. His service, though, and the Invictus legacy can never be taken from him. Those belong to him forever. And I think it's genuinely important that we say these things out loud because fairness demands it. It has become so easy in recent years to reduce Harry to a single story, the one about the family rift, the interviews, the departure. But a person is never just one story, and to remember only Harry's mistakes, while forgetting the very real courage and goodness he has shown, would be a deep injustice. Before he was a source of family drama, Harry was a young man who ran toward danger to serve his country, who insisted on being treated like everyone else, who mastered an extraordinarily difficult skill and used it in the service of others, and who, out of genuine compassion, built something that continues to heal broken lives to this day. Those things are true, and they matter, and they deserve to be honored regardless of whatever else has happened since. A fair account of any person includes both their failings and their finest hours. And Harry's finest hours, without question, were spent in uniform, in service, and in the cause of his wounded fellow soldiers. That is worth remembering and worth honoring always. And so now we come, gently, to James, and to the quiet truth at the heart of today's story. Because James, on his very different path, will almost certainly never have a chapter like this. James is being raised for a quieter, more private life, likely a civilian career of his own making, out of the spotlight. He may never wear a soldier's uniform. He will almost certainly never fly an Apache into a combat zone, or serve two tour in a war zone, or found a global movement for wounded veterans. That frontline, heroic, uniformed chapter that defined Harry, and that Harry poured his whole heart into, is simply not the road James is walking. This is especially striking when you consider the deep military tradition that runs through this family. Service in the armed forces has long been almost a rite of passage for royal men. James's own grandfather, Prince Philip, had a distinguished naval career during the Second World War, serving with genuine courage. His uncle, Prince William, spent 7.5 years in full-time military service as a search and rescue and air ambulance pilot. Even his father, Prince Edward, though he famously left the Royal Marines early, went on to hold ceremonial military appointments. For generations, the men of this family have worn the uniform, and yet, among all of them, it was Harry who took it furthest onto the front lines of actual combat, becoming the first royal since his uncle Prince Andrew to serve in a genuine war zone. So when we say James may never follow this path, we're noting a real departure from family tradition. James, it seems, is charting a quieter, more modern course, one less bound to the old expectations of military service. And that's very much in keeping with everything else we know about him, a young man gently stepping away from the grander, more traditional royal roles in favor of a simpler, more personal life. It's not a rejection of his family's values. It's simply a different expression of them, suited to a different young man and a different age. And I want to be very clear about what I mean by that, because it is not a criticism of James, not in the slightest. It is not that James couldn't serve bravely if he chose to. It is simply that his path is a different one, a quieter one, and that leads us to something genuinely worth reflecting on. Because the real lesson here isn't that one cousin is better than the other. It's that service and greatness come in many different forms. Harry served his country loudly, heroically on the front lines, and built something that heals thousands of wounded souls. That is one kind of nobility, and it is a magnificent one. James, by contrast, seems destined to serve quietly, dutifully, in smaller and less visible ways, supporting his family, championing gentle causes, and living a life of quiet integrity out of the spotlight. And that is another kind of nobility altogether. no less real for being quiet. The loud, brave, frontline path and the quiet, steady, dutiful path are simply two different ways of trying to do good in the world. And this family, at its best, has always needed both. So here, in the end, is the truth I most wanted to share with you today, and it's a truth about fairness. For all the times we celebrate James's quiet virtues, and rightly so, we should never forget to honor what Harry genuinely achieved. Because the young man who once seemed so lost, so aimless, so troubled, went out into the world, served his country with real courage through 2 tours of war, mastered one of the most difficult skills in the entire military, and then built a global movement that has given hope to thousands of wounded heroes. That is not nothing. That is something extraordinary. And it is the one great thing Harry did that his quiet young cousin James, for all his own gentle gifts, will almost certainly never do. When we look at these two very different members of the same family, the warrior and the quiet Earl, perhaps the wisest thing we can do is not to rank them against each other at all, but to recognize that each, in his own way, is simply trying to serve. Harry did it with a soldier's courage. James will do it with a quiet man's steadiness. And there is a place and a need in this world for both. Whatever the future holds for these two cousins, and whatever we may feel about the paths they've each chosen, let us at least remember this. Harry was a soldier, a real one, a brave one, and the good he did for his wounded comrades will outlast every headline and every controversy. That legacy is his, and no family fallout can ever take it away. And in remembering it, perhaps we're reminded of the most important thing of all. That every member of this complicated, fascinating family, in their own flawed and human way, is simply trying to leave the world a little better than they found it. Harry did it in uniform. James will do it in quiet. And both, in the end, deserve our respect. Thank you so much for watching. If this fairer look at Prince Harry's remarkable military service and the different path his young cousin James is walking meant something to you, please do let me know in the comments. Do you think we too often forget the genuine good Harry has done? And do you agree that quiet service and heroic service are both worthy in their own way? Until next time, take care.